The man suddenly pulled back the blanket only to find a peerless beauty lying on the bed. Her flawless white skin, clear and lively emerald eyes made roses pale and stars dull, captivating all men. They could hardly believe such a stunning face existed in the world, and what was even more astonishing was that this was not an illusion. Angel had truly descended to the human world. Last night, Jim was sleeping soundly in his room after drinking heavily, when suddenly a loud noise came from outside the pool, causing waves to surge into the room. Awakened, he immediately opened the door to check and saw what appeared to be a winged girl, Angel, floating in the center of the pool. Despite his overwhelming disbelief, Jim summoned his courage and cautiously stepped into the water. When he turned Angel's body over, her flawless face came into view, exuding an intoxicating charm and mysterious aura. But at that moment, he had no time to think further and quickly carried Angel back to his room, preparing to grab a towel to dry her clothes. However, when Jim returned to the room, Angel's clothes had already dried automatically. Staring at Angel's snow-white face and golden hair flowing with starlight, Jim couldn't help but slowly approach, only to realize she had stopped breathing. Initially, he planned to call an ambulance, but because he had indulged in pleasures the night before, Jim accidentally dropped his phone into the fish tank. Helpless, Jim had no choice but to abandon his gentlemanly manners and began performing artificial respiration on Angel. At the moment their lips touched, Angel suddenly opened her eyes, and a layer of pure white and gentle glow enveloped her body. Embarrassed by his earlier actions, Jim hurriedly explained to Angel, "This was only to save a life, I meant no offense." However, Angel paid no attention and instead stepped forward willingly, returning Jim's kiss with even greater passion. In fact, Angel didn't understand human love and intimacy. She only wished to express her gratitude for Jim's life-saving in such a pure and direct way. Perhaps there was a barrier between divine beings and mortals, and the moment she kissed him, Jim suddenly fainted. It wasn't until the next morning, as dawn broke, that Jim awoke from his sleep. Looking at the messy room, he thought everything from last night was just a dream. Until he saw Angel, surrounded by divine light and flying with wings, he couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. Just as Jim was stunned in shock, the door outside the room was suddenly knocked loudly again. At this moment, he remembered he had plans with friends and needed to play ball today. Since Jim had a fiancée, to avoid unnecessary misunderstandings caused by his friends seeing a beautiful woman in his house, he signaled to Angel not to show herself. When he hurriedly opened the door, his friends immediately sensed something unusual from his disheveled attire and suspected there was someone else inside. Ignoring Jim's protests, they barged straight into the room. After a thorough search, the friends all unintentionally focused their gaze on the area beneath the quilt, where it seemed something was gently wriggling on the bed. Then, with malicious intent, they lifted the quilt, revealing a stunningly beautiful face. Since Angel did not understand human language, she could only communicate through expressions and gestures with her wings. Watching her slowly spread her wings, the naive friends were instantly shocked and froze in place. After Jim revealed Angel's true identity, they hatched an evil plan to sell Angel to the zoo for public display, believing it would surely bring them huge profits. However, kind Jim did not adopt their suggestion, but decided to help Angel return to heaven as soon as possible. He believed that Angel, so pure, should not be tainted by worldly corruption. But even though he was furious, his friends showed no intention of stopping. Jim, unwilling to waste more words, turned and went back home. Because Angel was injured during her fall to the mortal world, her wings were damaged. Jim carefully bandaged her and continued to comfort her with gentle words. Fearing to disturb her pure and innocent heart, Jim's considerate actions warmed Angel's heart, and she couldn't help but lean in again for a kiss. Although she enjoyed this intimacy, Jim maintained his own boundaries and did not succumb to instinctive desires. At that moment, the doorbell rang again. Jim warned Angel not to show herself and cautiously went to open the door. Unexpectedly, standing outside was his fiancée, Patty. In fact, Patty had come the day after Angel's descent, but Jim, citing the mess at home, politely refused her entry. Patty didn't think much and only asked him to meet at a cafe in half an hour to properly resolve their issues. It turned out that the day before yesterday was their engagement party, but Jim was gloomy throughout. While guests celebrated inside, he sat alone in the garden, feeling down, letting a sudden rain soak his new suit. Patty, seeing this, felt awkward and forcibly pulled him back inside. But the next second, 3 masked gunmen burst into the villa. What was supposed to be a joyful engagement party quickly turned into a chaotic crime scene. However, the 3 masked robbers, not interested in money or women, had a clear target. They kidnapped Jim. His father-in-law initially wanted to call the police, but as the robbers left, they threw a rubber hand grenade, causing everyone to panic and run outside. After waiting a long time without an explosion, the phone inside the house rang. Bravely, Jim's father-in-law, using a doll as cover, risked his life to crawl inside and answer the call, only to learn that the kidnappers had informed him the grenade was made of rubber. Furious at being toyed with, Jim's father-in-law was enraged, while the culprits who orchestrated the prank cheered in their car. It turned out that this kidnapping was a prank arranged by Jim's 3 friends for his bachelor night, and he was also suffering from a hangover because of it. When Patty initially invited him to the cafe, he had already agreed but forgot due to a series of accidents, which is why she came again. Unexpectedly, the three of them accidentally ran into her. Patty, thinking she had been betrayed, angrily drove away. Jim, misunderstood, vented his anger at Angel at the door, but Angel was startled and fell. Jim hurried back inside to check on her. Seeing her unharmed and looking at Jim with innocent and pure eyes, her charming appearance instantly dispelled his anger. Later, in search of a way for Angel to return to heaven, the two went to the church together. Looking at the numerous images of angels everywhere inside the church, Jim was sure he had come to the right place. At that moment, a young boy who had just confessed to the priest about his excessive lust caught sight of the images, and his heart reignited with intense desire. Even as his sleeve was ignited by holy fire burning his skin, his springtime passion did not subside. It was only when he left the church that he let out a heart-wrenching scream. After the incident, Jim stayed with Angel in the main hall while he went to the confessional to tell the priest about his experience. However, the priest, a devout believer, did not believe in the existence of angels. Meanwhile, Angel was attracted to a holy statue and voluntarily climbed up to spread her wings, gazing at the statue. A devout female worshiper came over to pray kneeling, and when she opened her eyes, she happened to meet Angel's gaze and she screamed in fright, hurriedly fleeing. Angel was also frightened by the sudden scream and curled up in a corner. Hearing the scream, Jim immediately rushed out, wrapping the trembling Angel in a blanket and softly comforting her. Seeing the two embracing, the priest mistakenly thought they were engaging in improper behavior. Before Jim could explain, he expelled them from the church. That night, neither of them ate. Jim bought fries and a hamburger for Angel. Angel, who had never seen such food before, was so frightened by the hamburger's appearance that she was at a loss, attracting everyone's attention. Jim felt quite embarrassed and made an excuse to call Patty and leave alone while Angel stood dazed holding the fries. Perhaps because her stomach was empty, or perhaps because the smell of fries was tempting, Angel gently licked them first, then happily devoured them. Just as she was eating with gusto, three of Jim's friends tracked her down. Seeing Angel alone and obsessed with the fries, they wanted to make money and used more fries to lure her out of the car, planning to kidnap her to realize their dream of getting rich quickly. Fortunately, Jim finished his call and returned just in time to foil their plot. After shaking off his friends, Jim took Angel back home, only to encounter a vicious dog. Worried that Angel would be frightened, he quickly took out his keys to open the door. But Angel only gave a gentle glance, and the aggressive dog instantly became tamed, turning into a docile pet. Jim was surprised, but then his father-in-law stormed over in anger. Seeing them joking and playing with the dog, the father-in-law coldly questioned Jim whether he had betrayed his daughter. Before Jim could explain, he roughly grabbed Jim by the collar, seeming ready to fight. Angel, seeing this, turned her gentle gaze toward Jim's father-in-law. Unexpectedly, the father-in-law also calmed down like the aggressive dog, losing his previous hostility, and even advised Jim to take good care of Angel, saying he would handle his daughter's affairs. But after Jim and Angel returned to their room, the father-in-law became furious again, wanting to knock on the door and go in to scold him. At this moment, the docile dog also turned back into a fierce dog, and the man and dog faced off. In the end, the father-in-law was no match and was chased and bitten on the buttocks, retreating in disgrace. Composer Jim initially wanted to focus on composing music, but suddenly experienced a severe headache. He had no choice but to stop his work and take the medication he relied on long-term. Angel, watching from nearby, seemed to sense his pain. She spread her wings to comfort him, but was coldly rejected by Jim. Disheartened, Angel withdrew her wings and sadly retreated to her bedroom, gently closing the door. The next day, to clarify the misunderstanding with Patty, Jim decided to take Angel to his father-in-law's house. Because Angel's outfit was eye-catching, they first went to the mall to pick ordinary clothes, but ultimately chose a very ugly coat and ill-fitting high heels. Without Jim's support, Angel could hardly walk. Early before their appointment, Jim took Angel to the library, hoping to find a way in the literature to send her back to heaven. Unexpectedly, Angel became excited after seeing illustrations in a book, constantly emitting crisp sounds as if expressing her homesickness in her unique language. However, to Earthlings, this sound was just an ear-piercing noise and the library needed to remain quiet. Under everyone's watch, Jim had to hurriedly leave with the still-voicing Angel, leaving only a feather drifting down. Discovered later, it disappeared quietly without a trace. Soon after, they arrived at the father-in-law's house. As soon as they got out of the car, Patty upstairs saw them supporting each other and walking toward her. Already furious, she completely lost control. Before Jim could explain, she threw all their tokens of love down from upstairs. At this moment, the sprinkler in the yard was scheduled to spray water, and Jim and Angel, unable to dodge in time, got soaked from head to toe. Patty, instead of feeling victorious, held a bottle of wine and cried drunkenly. Unable to resolve the issue during the day, Jim called Patty again that night, begging for a face-to-face talk but was refused. She even picked up a megaphone and emitted a harsh, high-frequency sound into the receiver. Helpless, Jim had no choice but to take Angel home first. After washing up, Jim found Angel was missing from the room. He was immediately anxious and went out to look for her, fearing she had left quietly. At this moment, a dazzling light nearby caught Jim's attention. He approached and saw Angel emitting a pure, bright glow, blending with the green plants, like a dreamlike scene. What moved Jim even more was that Angel was singing a heavenly song, enchanting him. Seeing Jim approach, Angel retracted her magic and with a gentle gaze, she walked toward him, softly touching Jim's pale, tense face caused by worry. After this brief separation, their relationship grew even deeper, but just as they were immersed in happiness, a crisis was quietly approaching. Earlier, friends who failed to abduct Angel changed their strategy. They sent someone disguised as a love courier, using Jim's name to send gifts and love letters to Patty, inviting her to meet in the park at night. Patty thought Jim had learned to be romantic and happily agreed. Then the friends called Jim under the pretense of apologizing, inviting him and Angel to the same place at the same time for a heart-to-heart. Jim did not suspect anything and agreed readily. That night, Jim took Angel to the park. Patty, waiting there, saw the two arrive together and felt deeply humiliated. Seeing the situation, Jim immediately caught up, completely forgetting about Angel still remaining at the original spot, and that was precisely the goal of his friends. They used Patty to hold Jim back, taking the opportunity to capture Angel. By the time Jim reacted, his friends had already succeeded and quickly fled the scene. Furious from being played, Jim, despite searching all night by car, could never find Angel's trail. Just when he was at a loss and had no clue what to do, his friends had already contacted the media, planning to publicize Angel to attract wealthy elites and attempt to profit immensely. Angel, like a lamb destined for slaughter, was blindfolded and bound on the stage of a press conference, waiting quietly for a wealthy person to buy her. Meanwhile, Jim was waiting at a friend's house when he suddenly received a call. Jim learned that his friends were attending a press conference, and he immediately snapped to his senses. He then rushed to the scene at the address provided. At this moment, Angel had already been brought to the front of the stage, fortunately with her wings not exposed. Seeing this, Jim immediately jumped onto the stage, punching and knocking down several friends. One of them struggled to get up and fight back, and Angel, using a move she had just learned, swung her fist and knocked him off the stage. To prevent the situation from escalating, Jim, who was gaining the upper hand, quickly picked up Angel and hurriedly left the scene of the press conference. However, when they got into the car, their intimate embrace was photographed by reporters chasing after them, and the footage was broadcast on television, all falling into Patty's eyes. Previously, she only hated Jim's betrayal, but now her hatred extended to Angel, like a malignant tumor, rapidly eroding her mind, turning her into a madwoman without reason. Her family thought she was smashing objects in anger, but unexpectedly she took out a hunting rifle, determined to die with a disloyal pair. Meanwhile, the three old friends who had been publicly humiliated also longed for revenge. At this point, no one knew where Jim and Angel had gone. After leaving the press conference to avoid worldly troubles, Jim took Angel to a forest cabin in the countryside to stay temporarily. Though not completely isolated, it was a paradise, fresh air, picturesque scenery, and filled with the presence of adorable creatures. The two lived a fairy tale-like life here. Jim was responsible for earning money, and Angel guarded her beauty and innocence. Jim carefully cared for her wings, and Angel gently watched over the forest's life. In their leisure time, Angel would gently pluck her feathers to tease Jim as he slept. Jim would read books, gazing at her stunning face. Until one day, Angel unexpectedly discovered her wings had healed but was reluctant to let Jim know, fearing she had no reason to stay by his side anymore. While Jim was asleep, she quietly sneaked into the woods, trying to fly again. She spread her wings and ran lightly through the forest, and her animal friends came out to greet her. Her pace quickened, and finally she took off, soaring into the sky, flying over mountains and rivers, rushing toward the brilliant sunset. Soon after, a flash of blue light appeared, and Angel quietly returned to the cabin, rebandaged her wings, pretending they had not yet healed. At night, the two people, their feelings growing stronger, sat around a campfire talking heart to heart. Jim finally revealed the reason for his gloom at the engagement party. 6 months ago, Jim started having headaches, and frequent attacks prevented him from creating. To ease his anxiety, Jim and 3 friends indulged in pleasures, and later he met Patty. The music Jim composed was already unpopular, and Patty advised him to give up composing and marry her. At first, Jim thought marriage would settle his mind, but the night of the engagement made him even more uneasy. It wasn't until he met Angel that Jim experienced unprecedented happiness during their time together. Jim admitted he liked Angel, but he also knew Angel didn't belong here, and their union was doomed. This story appears to Jim confiding in Angel, but in fact, it is him warning himself not to fall too deeply in love, lest he suffer serious heartbreak. Initially, Angel listened quietly, occasionally showing pity. As Jim's emotions grew more intense, she stood up and leaned over gently, nestling into his chest like a precious treasure. But warmth always has an end. Jim knew Angel's wings had healed. Despite Angel's reluctance and even shedding a tear, there was an insurmountable chasm between humans and gods. They were destined to be apart. As they reluctantly said goodbye, Patty suddenly appeared with a hunting rifle. It turned out that after Jim's disappearance, she had been investigating his whereabouts out of revenge. Coincidentally, the day before, a police officer found Jim's vehicle and informed her, who had previously reported the case. Patty tracked him here, and Angel immediately went into hiding upon hearing the noise. Patty approached Jim, then slapped him and asked, "Where is Angel?" Jim said Angel had already left, but Patty didn't believe him and was about to strike again. Suddenly, she was knocked down heavily and kicked in the buttocks, falling clumsily and getting mud on her lips and teeth. Seeing this, Jim immediately realized Angel was secretly helping. He groped to find the hidden Angel, trying to calm her down, and tried to catch her, but hadn't touched her yet when Patty's parents suddenly appeared. They came here partly worried that their emotionally unstable daughter had secretly followed, partly because their cosmetics company was facing a sales crisis. The father-in-law had previously wanted Angel to endorse their products after seeing her, but several visits to Jim's house were thwarted or scared off by vicious dogs. Later, seeing his daughter causing a stir in the city over the search for Jim and Angel, the father-in-law secretly followed her and finally found this place. He demanded to know Jim and Angel's whereabouts. Before Jim could respond, his three friends arrived with Jim's father, following police clues. The conflicting goals of the three parties immediately led to a chaotic fight, and no one noticed that Jim had already fainted on the ground. But at that moment, Angel, who had been hidden for a long time, suddenly appeared. Unable to bear seeing her beloved being bullied, she shed her usual gentle demeanor, emitting a sharp scream, then summoned a storm of lightning and rain, directly targeting Patty's family, regardless of how they tried to dodge. After punishing everyone severely, Angel made a gesture of entrusting Jim's father, then transformed into a beam of light and flew into the sky. As Angel departed, the tragic news spread. After a detailed examination by the doctor, Jim was diagnosed with late-stage brain tumor, and it seemed his time was running out. On the brink of death, Jim saw Angel descend, and under Angel's gentle touch, he finally realized that he should have died long ago on the night of the bachelor party. However, because Angel accidentally collided with an unidentified flying object and broke his wings, Angel was unable to bring Jim to heaven in time. Suddenly, Jim became curious. Does everyone see Angel after they die? Angel gently shook his head, indicating that only good people are granted this privilege. Although he was happy to be the lucky one, Jim still felt some fear in the face of death. But what scared him the most was that he would never have the chance to be with Angel again. Perhaps to avoid regret, Jim, who had been suppressing his feelings, finally said, "I love you." As Angel kissed his lips, his life quietly slipped away at that moment. However, when a few friends came to bid him farewell a few days later, they found that he had not passed away. Even more surprisingly, the angel with wings had transformed into a female nurse. The three of them suddenly realized the truth and exited the room in shock. It turned out that at the very moment Jim left, Angel, unable to bear witnessing his lover's passing, gently wrapped his body with his wings and offered a devout prayer to God. God, moved by Jim's pure goodness and compassionate towards their deep love, not only restored Jim's life, but also allowed Angel to stay among humans temporarily, to accompany him for the rest of his days. This concludes the story. Thank you, friends of the audience, for your support. The next episode will be coming soon.